This is the Forbes Books Podcast, conversations with remarkable folks who are impacting the world of business and beyond. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and this week I'm joined by Brittany Dolin and Nicole Dayan, co-founders of the Pocketbook Agency. Brittany brings years of experience as an assistant for high-profile families. She co-founded the Pocketbook Agency to create deeper connections in hiring. Nicole has over 20 years of diverse experience across entertainment. She takes a creative, holistic approach rooted in commitment and loyalty. Together, Brittany and Nicole are reimagining the hiring process with their fresh approach and focus on meaningful connections. Brittany, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Joe. We're excited to be here.
And Nicole, thank you for being here as well.
Hi, Joe. Thank you.
You're very welcome. So I want to start by talking about transferable skills, because I'm old enough to remember hearing HR, recruitment people saying they don't believe in transferable skills. It's like, if you have experience in one field, you have to work in that job for the rest of your life. Then all of a sudden, that little pandemic popped up, and HR and recruiters were like, you know what, transferable skills, I think that's important. So, Brittany, start with you. Tell me about this transition in the recruitment world of transferable skills. For at one point, weren't a thing that people were employing people by, but now it's incredibly important.
I love this question, Joe, for many reasons, but mostly because in our business, we see resumes all day long with skill sets that maybe are not exactly what the job is looking for, but they're completely transferable. Pocketbook works mainly on domestic and corporate administrative roles, anything support level. And for example, if we have a position that's for an executive assistant, and maybe we have a candidate applying that has worked in roles that are similar to an executive assistant, but maybe not exactly that job title, I would say pre-pandemic, it was a lot harder for us as recruiters to get their resume in front of a client and say, meet this candidate because they have a great skill set for what you're looking for. Because previously, if it wasn't exactly what the job entailed, the candidate would not be viable for that role. But now we're seeing candidates that have skill sets that are not completely aligned, but are very close. And they're getting their foot in the door a lot easier than they used to. And we love to see that, because there are so many skill sets that are transferable, especially in administrative roles and household roles, where maybe you were a nanny and you want to transfer that skill set into being a family assistant or a house manager. And you were doing some of those duties in your nanny role, but you've never actually had the job title of house manager or assistant. But we're seeing that skill set be transferred into other jobs now, and it's really wonderful to see.
And outside of transferable skills, Brittany, what other changes have you seen since you guys founded the company nearly 10 years ago now?
Yeah, we've seen a multitude of changes. I would say one of the biggest things that we're seeing right now are changes within technology is the biggest thing. We've seen AI. We've seen huge changes even with ChatGPT coming out. I think in terms of changes over the last decade of having Pocketbook is not only this increase in automation and increase in AI on the recruiting side, also just candidates and job seekers being able to utilize those platforms to make their resumes better and to, be able to utilize all of those pieces into applying for a job. I think AI in recruiting is a huge thing that we're seeing. I mean, many firms, many companies are using it for initial interviews. They're using it for just vetting out which candidates are the right fit based on skill set and resume. So I would say AI and any part of the AI component is really the biggest thing we've seen.
I do agree with that. And I think that it's going to expand further, especially as, into next year as well. It's definitely going to enhance the efficiency of resume screening, candidate matching, and definitely initial interviews. But we'll see what's going to happen too, right? Because people still want that personal touch. AI and automation will help in the recruitment space, but I think people are still going to want that human touch.
And speaking of AI, one of the big cruxes of the SAG-AFTRA strike was about AI. And a lot of your work is in the entertainment space as well. So let's talk about now, thankfully, the longest work stoppage in the history of Hollywood, I think, one of the longest ever. How did that affect you? I mean, it was nearly 6 months of WGA going into SAG. How did that affect what you were doing at the Pocketbook Agency?
Yeah, so we are a LA-based company. We're based in LA. We work across the whole US, but because we're based in LA, we get such a large network of entertainment-based jobs, whether it's for celebrities, personal assistants for celebrities, or executive assistants for entertainment CEOs. We have, a wide range of different types of roles in that space in particular. And during the strike, we actually saw a massive decrease in jobs for obvious reasons, right? I think people were not hiring because they were nervous about budgets, about what the future of their work looked like within entertainment. So we did see many less jobs within the entertainment space. I am happy to report that has shifted. I would say over the last month in particular, we've seen a huge increase, probably like a 30% increase in our entertainment-based jobs across the board, mostly in LA.
Awesome. And what are some of those entertainment jobs that you guys do placement for?
I would say our biggest role that we typically place in entertainment is the executive assistant position. So we work with many very well-known large entertainment companies, production companies, music-based companies. We also tend to place many personal assistant roles for celebrities, whether it's music artists, actors across the US. But LA is such a big base for those types of roles, we've always noticed.
And one thing that's pretty prevalent in show business is sort of like the freelance mentality. When you get a gig, it's even this from directors, actors, writers, on down to producers, everyone. It's a finite number of months, weeks that you do a job. So Brittany, how are these placements for these executive assistant positions? Are they treated as such, or do they have long-term aspirations when they're placed with some of these companies?
I would say it's a combination of both. We tend to see more of the permanent placement roles where we get a celebrity or an exec at an entertainment company looking to hire somebody permanently and long-term, because ultimately when you're hiring any type of assistant or support level role, that person is working so closely in your space, whether you're an exec or an artist or whatever it might be. So that personal component and working so closely in somebody's life and work and space, you tend to want to have that role be a long-lasting position because the assistant really gets to know every detail of your life, whether it's work, personal, everything in between. So those roles tend to be permanent. We do see some shorter term temporary roles, maybe 3 to 6 months, but it's much more, I would say probably 80% of the roles that we place are permanent roles.
Awesome. And Nicole, let's talk about relationships, because that's obviously a key part of what you do, building relationships with trusted companies and folks that would hire people that you're offering up. So how does that work? Because I know relationships are a big part of what made you successful throughout your career. So tell us about how that actually works, because we all talk about like relationships, like, yeah, let's start a relationship. But as we all know, it's like dating. It's very hard to get into a relationship. How do you build these relationships at the Pocketbook Agency?
Well, I think it started from the beginning. When Brittany and I met each other, we were working for a husband and wife team. There were a lot of people that would come to us and say, hey, I want to hire this assistant. Can you help us with the resume, this and that? Okay, fine. We did. And then we realized, okay, why don't we launch our own company? So we already had those relationships from the people that, the company that we worked for. And so over time, we nourished, more relationships. We got referrals. And actually, Brittany did a fantastic job. With business development, she hit the ground running with that. And she has developed so many fantastic relationships over the years. And now it's just, we're basically referral based. We do have a wonderful website. People apply all the time and we do get phone calls. But I would say from the inception of our company back, when we first started, we already nurtured those relationships with people that we would talk to on a daily basis, whether it would be at the house when she was working for the wife, or me in the office for the husband. There were so many people in entertainment that we got to meet, especially in the music industry, because they both had a global event producing firm. And so we worked a lot with people in music. And then Brittany's husband, Derek, too, he used to work in music and still does. And so she was able to nurture those relationships too. She would go to dinners. And for me, I have kids now. So at my school, at the kids' school, I just go up and talk about our company. And a lot of people work in entertainment or work in law. Like, hey, I could use an assistant. Great. Let's set it up. Give me a call tomorrow. I'll put you in touch with one of our recruiters. I think it's not being afraid to talk to people, not being afraid to want to help people. It's been beautiful to see over the years how many people we have been able to help.
And so let's step back to the beginning, Nicole, and in terms of you two were both assistants, and did you both have, or one of you have, the entrepreneurial spirit? Or like, let's start a company. Like, whose idea was that, and what were the initial steps? Because to some, it could appear to be a big jump to go from assistant to running a company that hires assistants.
So Brittany came to me one day and she's like, why aren't we making money doing this? Because so many people would come to us and it was great. And I said, you know what, you're right. And so we would get together on weekends and we would spend all of our time on the weekend formulating our business plan. And finally we decided, okay, we're going to launch Pocketbook. And so of course we had to go and tell our boss what we were going to do. And she went first and then I went second, and they weren't very happy with us, but you know what? I think now they're proud of what we've been able to achieve. So yeah, we started off as two assistants, and it's great because we can see both sides of it, right? We've been in that position of the assistant, the support role. We've also seen the side of, how to run a business, and on the client side and what their needs are. So it's kind of like a beautiful marriage in a way. And that's why we're matchmakers. We're career matchmakers. We're not just a regular recruitment firm. And that's what makes us stand out from everybody else.
That's awesome. Now, Brittany, it's hard for me to feel bad for rich people, but when two rich people lose two assistants, I almost feel a little bad. So, Brittany, what were those emotions like? Because one thing is for like one of you to jet, but like, hey, see, we're both starting a company. And Nicole did mention that there was some awkwardness there, but how did that all go down?
We laugh about it now, but I still remember nearly 10 years ago, the tension and the nervous feeling in my stomach when Nicole and I made the decision. Okay, we've built up Pocketbook over the last it was probably 2 years at that point that we were working on it and slowly placing people on the side. And we looked at each other and said, we have to actually make the leap of faith if we're going to see if we're going to succeed or fail. Like, we have to do it. We can't do both. There's no way. We don't have the time. So we agreed that one of us would go first. And I remember the conversation with our employer and just explaining to them, we've loved working for you. Like, how do you we do this now when we coach our candidates. How do I give notice? Well, this is how you do it. I've loved working for you. I have learned so much about work and business and life in general. And I look up to you and I really did see my boss as a mentor and still do. And I said, listen, we came up with this idea. We're feeling called to run with it. And I'm giving my 2 weeks notice. And I remember the look on her face, and I'm sure she'll listen to this podcast and she'll laugh now. But I remember the look on her face. She was like, where are you going? I just remember that feeling when I gave notice and then Nicole gave notice. And, we did feel bad, of course, because regardless of wealth status or what's going on in your world, when you genuinely rely on the people in your life and your assistant, which we know this very well with the people we work with, when they leave, it creates a lot of chaos in your life. Luckily, we're able to actually refill both of our positions. They trusted us through Pocketbook to find our replacements, which was wonderful. And we still have a wonderful relationship with them today. And we're very thankful because it's because of them that Nicole and I met and we were able to build Pocketbook. So it was a very interesting process. But it's, like I said, when we have candidates now that we place in jobs and they say, how do I give notice? What do I say? We kind of revert back to that mindset of, this is how you do it. This is what you say. And you move on with what the universe has planned for you.
And Nicole, one thing I'm curious about, just to give additional context for folks listening to this, when you decide to start the company and what you're doing now, what do folks do when it comes to hiring executive assistants? Is there anything like a Pocketbook Agency before you two started this? Were there similar organizations that were able to place EAs with executives or at homes? Give us a little give us a little color in terms of like, what was the market you were trying to address and what was the competition like in that space?
Absolutely. So there were many companies at the time, and Brittany and I actually used one of the companies to find our jobs. But we really felt that there was a need for a refresher, right? We wanted to put like more of a modern approach to staffing. And that's why Pocketbook was also born, because we didn't have the best experience, I think, working with our recruiter. I can say I did not. And so it's like, we have to change the space. How are we going to do that? We know we can. And the best part is that we already are assistants. So we know this side of it, and we know the client side of it. So that was what we were able to bring to the table. For us, it was just that more of a modern approach to the old school style of recruitment. And a lot of it now too, it's not just, pushing pen and paper. It's more using technology as well to help facilitate everything. And we've been at the forefront of that, especially using our ATS system that we have in place, and, doing a total revamp on our branding, and the website that we use is user-friendly, and social media, and all of these different things that we've been able to achieve over the years as far as making the space what it should be from our perspective.
So, Brittany, any kind of disruptor out there is always going to look into an industry and like, I like this and I'm good at this and I want to make it better, or use Nicole's words, modernize it. So how do you modernize? Because I almost feel like the way the old school Hollywood, there's like a lady with a cigarette and a phone calling somebody and saying, hey, I've got this girl for you, kind of thing. So I'm sure it's come a long way since then, but how is Pocketbook Agency modernizing this sort of old school referral-based system where people would call one another and place people in jobs?
Yeah. So I love that you gave that example of that old school woman with the cigarette and the phone, because those agents still exist. And I actually love it. I think it's so cool. I love that. When I think of like a classic recruiter, that's what I think of. And I love it. But what I think when it comes to modernizing the industry and just Pocketbook itself, what our vision was how do we take this great industry of recruiting? It's wonderful. I mean, everyone needs a recruiter. Everyone needs to hire. It's a very important industry. And we took what we saw were what I want to call the old school factors of how recruitment was happening. And there's so many established, wonderful recruitment firms that have been in business since, the 80s, 90s. We've only been around, 9 years. So we are definitely newer kids on the block. But I think what we've evolved in our years of experience through Pocketbook is, yes, we're modernizing in the fact that we are looking at recruiting a bit differently. I think old school recruiting, you're really looking at skill set on paper. You're looking at how quickly can you fill a role, how many clients can you take on, and you're looking at more in volume, right? You're looking, and I don't want to say, I'm not bashing any agencies. There's some really good ones out there, but a lot of recruitment firms operate like a factory a little bit, where you're getting in as many job orders as you can, filling as many roles as you can. And that's great. That's a great business model. But when it comes to actually matchmaking, which is what we set out to do, you have to approach it differently. We would rather fill less roles per year and work with less clients and have really quality placements that we call our clients 10 years from now, or the people that we placed and they're still in the role. And we have some of those. And that's really exciting for us. We love that. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like our secret sauce of what makes us tick and makes us do what we do and makes us passionate, is really seeing those long-term relationships evolve. Because especially in the administrative role, like I mentioned earlier, it's a position where you're working very closely across every part of your employer's business and personal life. So having somebody last many years in that role is really important, because it's hard to start over with those types of roles. Going back to modernizing it, we took the regular recruiting process, which is, multi-steps of vetting, really getting to know your candidates, really understanding their skill set, their resume, who they worked for, et cetera, and putting our own special touch on it, which is what Nicole and I launched, and we called the Smarter Staffing Technique. And we called it this because, yes, we're taking some original approach when it comes to really evaluating certain things, skill set, resume, basic things. But when we're looking at the bigger picture, especially in support roles, we're looking at who these candidates are as people. We're not just looking at them like a resume or a placement. We're looking at how is your personality and how does that work well with the person that we're maybe putting you in this role for? Or how, based on your skill set and who you worked for, are those roles aligned with what this employer is looking for? And how does that compare? Like, is the relationship there? It's a little bit less hard skills and a little bit more soft skills, but the perfect combination of matchmaking. And that's why we say we are career matchmakers, because it's not just sending a client, 50 resumes and saying, maybe one of these people could be a fit. It's really curating the candidate pool. It's really getting deep into skill set, personality, the things that make the job seekers tick and what their long-term goals are. Because when we can look at those goals and what they're made of, aside from just on paper, what they are on paper, that's where the matchmaking really happens, in my opinion. So we've put this smarter staffing technique together that we really think has modernized the entire industry in our sense of what we're doing, because it's really been successful. It's something that we've fine-tuned over the last 9 years, and we continue to fine-tune all the time. But it's worked really well for us, and I think that shows in our reputation, our results, our repeat clients, all of that.
Awesome. And Nicole, earlier you mentioned that you're not just another recruitment agency. So why are you not just another? Like, what differentiates you? Is there one thing? I know Brittany referenced some of your secret sauce there, but to you, as someone who founded the company from scratch and wanted to be different from other organizations in the market, why are you just not another recruitment agency?
We're matchmakers. Like Brittany was saying, it's that, like, the factory, we really take the time to get to know the candidate, to get to know the client. And we want it. I always say this, and I used to say this too, it's about more of like a family, right? I'm helping, like, especially the candidate. This is their career. That's a big deal. This is your career. You're going to go work for somebody. You guys are going to be like a family together. It's that relationship. I think too, like, it's what's so beautiful about our company is the relationships that we're able to build. And it's not just between the candidate and the client, but also with our internal team as well, our own company. Our whole goal is a relationship. That's how we become so successful, is we've been able to take the client and the candidate experience and make that into a beautiful relationship that's going to last for years to come, as well as our own internal team at Pocketbook. We have a recruiter that's been with us for how many years now, Brittany? 6 years. We've never had anyone leave, and so for us, it's really important, no matter what aspect of our business, is that we have that relationship. We create that relationship, that's everlasting.
That's cool. And Brittany, Nicole mentioned building the team. I'd love to get your thoughts on the transition from being the assistant to being the boss. What was that like early on? What did you struggle with? Maybe you still struggle with it today, but what was difficult for you to make that jump from someone who is taking orders to then giving orders? And I know that's kind of a very kind of black and white way of asking the question, but I'm sure that was a big stark difference from what you were doing to what you do today.
Absolutely. It was. And I think there's definitely an adjustment period. I would be lying if I said it was seamless and, everything was great. I think when Nicole and I launched Pocketbook in 2014, we didn't have any employees. It was just the two of us. So we were the CEOs, we were HR, we were the CFOs, we were the recruiters, we were everything. So I think during that few years of not having any employees initially, it really helped us learn and develop how to be business owners, because now we have, there's 12 of us in the company, and we have employees and we manage them, and we love our team. I think our entire team is extremely passionate about what they do. And I think that's a reflection of how Nicole and I run the business. We operate from a place of passion and waking up every day and being excited and getting to do this. I think there's a perspective of how you look at your work. I think the transition of moving from, I like what you said, Joe, taking orders to giving orders, because it's true. When you're an assistant, you're an order taker. It's a big part of the job. It was definitely a transition, but I think that over time, Nicole and I really developed into becoming good leaders and good managers and good business owners. And I say that with confidence, because it definitely takes time and practice, and nobody's perfect. But I think the reflection of our team today and who we have on our team and our values and how we operate is a direct reflection of how Nicole and I built the company. And I think I can speak for us both when I say that we're really proud of what we've built and who we have on the team and what we do every day.
And Nicole, when you talk to entrepreneurs, they'll always say starting a company's hard, but scaling up could be even harder. So take me back to that decision to make the move and grow the company, hire more people? How did that all go down?
We were really good at what we did. And we said, okay, well, it's time to grow now. So we literally went from working at my dining room table to an office in West Hollywood that was the size of a closet. We literally were like on top of one another with our computer and our phone. And then that was the realization of, okay, we need to hire people because we started to pick up, right? We started to get busy, and Brittany and I, we've done so well as far as risk taking. Let's increase our sales by X percentage each year, over the next 5 years. How do we do that? We need to hire people. We need to hire recruiters to bring in more business, obviously keep the same quality, right? We've never shied away from the quality, and I think that's also what makes us very special, just going back to, is the quality that we can produce. To get the business where financially we wanted it to be, we had to hire. And so let's take the risk. So we hired one recruiter. Then we said, okay, we're doing really well. We have the money to hire another recruiter. And we just kept going and kept going. And now there's 12 of us total, and we intend to grow even more. But it's taking a risk. And even during COVID, where there's so much economic uncertainty, we were hiring. Business is a little bit down, but now is the time. Let's jump on this. Let's take that risk. We'll hire people. And we were coming out of the gate after COVID, everybody started going back into the office. We hit the ground running. We were ready. And we did really well the next year. It's just taking that risk to get those financial goals that we wanted to reach. That's what we did. So year after year, we would hire slowly, calculated, but we were always on the same page. That's what has made Pocketbook 2 successful, is that we have a great partnership. And, we listen to one another, and hey, I think maybe we can hire here. Oh, maybe we should wait a few months and let's see what the market's going to produce, because it's always, keeping up with the trends, keeping up with the market trends. But we've always been so good at communicating with one another and making the move at the right time, hiring at the right time, looking at our budget. Okay, we can do this. We can't do that, but that's okay. We're going to spend on our branding. We're going to hold off on our branding. I think we timed it each, year after year for 9 years. We have timed it so well. So I think we're proud of that. We're proud that we were able to sustain. I can say, especially during COVID, getting 2 loans, and you know what? We didn't have to let go of any of our employees. We're a small company, but we didn't have to let go of anyone. And we're very, very proud of that.
Awesome. And one more thing on the world of entertainment. So you two started the company in 2014, and then 2017, the Me Too movement happened. And it was an open secret in Hollywood that there were some shitty bosses out there. There's shitty bosses everywhere, but because of entertainment and the spotlight that it has, people found out more about it in 17. I'm curious, Brittany, how did that movement affect what you do in your day-to-day? Because there was this hyper awareness, whereas maybe not that we were all sort of complicit in it, but we were like, yeah, the guy's a jerk, but he's very successful. So you put up with the jerk because it's just what we have to do to work our way up through this business. So take us back to those first, I guess, year 3 or 4 of the Pocketbook Agency.
Yeah. So I love that you asked that, because in entertainment and in any industry, there's great bosses, there's difficult bosses, there's all kinds of reputations in every industry. And of course, we've seen our fair share of all kinds of things, like any recruitment firm would, or any employee, or, anybody. Just, you see different personalities and reputations. I remember vividly in 2017 when this happened, because we had certain candidates that worked within entertainment for certain employers that will remain unnamed. But they would come to us and say, well, I'm sure you've heard at this point, now that it's out in the open, that so-and-so is, horrible and did X, Y, and Z. And, so now that that's on my resume, maybe it works to my benefit. And, it kind of did, because some of the candidates that had worked for, the Harvey Weinsteins and people of similar, that were in the news at that time, they actually had a leg up a little bit in their career, because they could say, I worked in this really tough environment and I've been through the trenches and I learned a lot about my career, and that made me a better assistant. So it's actually an interesting thing that happened, because I think it actually really worked to a lot of candidates' benefits in that sense, which is a different perspective because we saw both sides. We also saw people trying to hire that we now knew had reputations, and that put us in a tough position because, of course, we want to work for our clients, but we never want to put anybody in a job where we know somebody has a terrible reputation. So that made our jobs a little bit more complicated too. So we just tried in those instances to be as transparent as possible, especially if they were, a pre-existing client and, some news came out about something, whether we knew it was true or not, because there was so much hearsay, especially at that time with stories popping up left and right. It changed our perspective a little bit with how we were approaching hiring just in general, with having candidates do more of their own research and make their own decisions if they wanted to take an interview or like I mentioned, just kind of giving them a little bit of a leg up in their interview process because they'd worked for someone that was maybe in the news or challenging.
Great. Thank you for sharing that perspective. And if you're listening to this and you'd like to work with Brittany and Nicole and find out more about the Pocketbook Agency, just go to pocketbookagency.com. Brittany, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate you joining me today.
Thank you.
And Nicole, thank you as well. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Joe.
And that'll do it for another Forbes Books podcast. Don't forget to leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe so you don't miss any new episodes. You can always connect with me on X, LinkedIn, and Instagram at Joe Pardavila or TikTok at J Pardavila. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.